So as we discussed, there are kind of three type of inbound for REST and SOAP. First one we studied about direct web services. Second
Mm-hmm.
one, indirect web services, or we say as import-side web services. And the
Mm-hmm.
last one, which we will be discussing in this session, is scripted REST web services. Scripted
Which
inbound.
one? Last one?
Script, scripted
Scripted.
inbound.
Scripted.
Yeah.
Okay.
So the, as you know, first one we can map directly field and the data should come in the format of what ServiceNow accepts. So it's client responsibility or it's sender tool responsibility to send the data in exact form what ServiceNow accepts. ServiceNow
Mm-hmm.
accept. If they are
Right.
not, then we can't use that. So that is where we found its limitation. Then we switched to import set API, import set inbound API, where we can kind of intercept the data sent by third party tool and we can convert it in ServiceNow understandable format. Or if we do want to any do any calculations or any kind of validations in the data before creating the record, we switch to import set so that we can intercept data, because as per import set features, the data comes into the import set table, and from there through transformer we need to transform it to our target table. And then
Yes.
this import set always for the integration is type of synchronous. However, when you load the data manual, it's kind of asynchronous.
Asynchronous. Okay.
So these were all the things. Apart from that, in integration, we have studies how to configure the outbound. Basically, when ServiceNow need to send data to some other tool, so they will be sharing the
Yes.
API, and we will be consuming it. So how to consume that and send the data to that tool, we covered that. So now we will be covering the scripted REST. So if you recall, last two inbound, that is direct
Mm-hmm.
and indirect, or we say import set. First
Yes.
one having the limitation, the data stored in ServiceNow format. Second one then come into the picture now. Let's say I need to do an integration for my CMDB for the server creation.
Okay.
Okay, so if I go to my server table in ServiceNow,
Mm-hmm.
how many types of server they can be?
Many.
Many, right? And in ServiceNow, as per ServiceNow CMDB design, uh, there are like different tables for each of them, right?
Right.
So all server is something which is CMDB underscore server table. Okay,
Mm.
that is the parent table to all of these server. That is CMDB Linux, CMDB Windows Server, Unix, ESX, Solaris, AIX, HP, and OSX, NetWare. So all these servers are child of this CMDB server table. So
Mm-hmm.
basically, if we say, if we open this all, that means all the servers in these child classes will be available in parent class, right?
Mm.
Now, our requirement is in our organization, we are just using Linux, Windows, and Unix. Okay. Or I will say like, I want Linux and Unix server integration from a tool in which kind of user insert a data of Linux and Windows server, or and that tool could be anything. So
Mm-hmm.
now we need a API. From there, they can kind of insert either Linux or Windows server into the Linux or server tables.
Okay.
Now, what does that mean? That means there are two tables. And as per your previous knowledge, just give me a
Mm.
moment.
We have one table.
Just So we were at the point like, so we were explaining this, and we were like, here as per our example, we are having two tables, right? One is the Linux, another one is the Windows. Am I audible?
Yes.
Okay. So as per your previous knowledge, what do you think, like which kind of API we can pick, direct or the import set, which one we can pick?
I think that no one, right?
Yeah. Why?
Because in direct integrations, there's some limitation. In import also, we had only one table,
Hmm.
1 to 1.
So basically, in the direct table, we can share the API of direct, like, so
One
one
table.
table. And import set also, we can map just one table, right?
Hmm.
Now, but we need to insert the data in two tables. So one way is use the direct API of Windows and Linux, or indirect API of Windows and Linux, like import set
Separately.
separate, create two.
Uh-huh.
But thing is that another team might want, like, they want, I need just one API through which I should be able to create all type of servers.
Okay. Okay.
Because if you will create two, they, for them, they are kind of two integrations, right? They need
Yeah.
to maintain two integration then. And
Hmm.
in future, let's say Unix or ESX comes, then they need to maintain post integrations. Okay. Another way is to, like, let's insert everything in the CMDB CI server, but that will again not, that will, what it will do, we can share just one API with them, because
Yeah.
this is a parent class, right? So every server is coming here, but for them now it is fine. But for ServiceNow structure and ServiceNow kind of CMDB team, it is not fine, because they want to classify it whether it's a Linux or Unix, because here it is a base class. So they don't want everything to become in the base class. They want in their separate child classes, and then when we will open the parent class, all the child record automatically comes into the parent.
Okay.
So here, main problem, we want to have a single URL or single endpoint for inserting the data into multiple tables, which we cannot achieve both through both we studied till now.
Yeah.
One is
Just one question.
Yeah.
Like when we set up this integration, either direct or import set or scripted, and how we schedule it. I mean, when the data should be coming every day or weekly. Is it in business rule?
See, if you are outbound, obviously the consumer will schedule it.
So then how we schedule it? It's using
It
business rule.
depends. Mostly if it is a real time, it will happen on the trigger basis. Like yesterday, if you see outbound one, we were using, like, scheduling it through business rule.
Correct.
Right. So as soon as ticket was getting created, business rule was running. It was in real time basically.
Okay.
If you don't want it to kind of be in the real time, you want like once in a day trigger all the tickets, all those things. If you want to do, you can use business rule. Sorry, you can use a scheduled job. The scheduled job will run once in a day, and that will trigger, send all the incident. So
basically, the one who is outbound, he needs to schedule it, right?
Mostly, but sometimes scenario changes, because if the other tool said, like, no, we won't be pushing it, we will be just kind of publishing again. Yeah, you can say outbound one. So you need to, like, you need to fetch the data basically. Then it will be a kind of
pull the data.
Yeah, pull the data. So that won't be in real time, but at that time, being ServiceNow, you need to kind of
schedule a job.
Schedule a job.
Okay.
And so it depends. Mostly integrations happen in the real time, so they are basically trigger based most of the time. Sometimes you will see 10-15% like CMDB integrations. So you pull the data once in a day, all the CIs and everything.
And how this LDAP integration? I think in our project it happens once in a day, in midnight.
LDAP is an out of box plugin. Okay.
Okay.
So you got a scheduled job out of box, and that scheduled jobs fetch the data once in a day, or you, if you want it up, depend on you, how you want to run it multiple times. So
So we don't need to write any script or something. It's like out of the box plugin.
yeah, it is an out of box plugin. You just need to do the configuration part in the video.
Okay. Okay.
So now switching back to our topic. So
Yeah.
as we have seen, there are certain limitations. One, when we need single URL for creating the record in multiple tables. Another example, one, you understood this part, right?
Yes.
Where we are limited for not able to use those indirect and direct one. Second example could be sometimes if you will see when a change is getting created, mostly full change cycle used to get driven by task, right? Once the change is created, then they create a kind of, once the approval is done, then they will create a kind of build task, dev task, and then QA task, then deployment task, right? Everything mostly get driven through task in the change. Now, let's say a third party tool is going to create change in ServiceNow. Now, they will create change as well as task,
Okay.
change task. Now, if you know, there are two different tables, right?
Change task and change.
Yes. Now, if you want them to create change and change task, if you will use direct or indirect, what you will have to do? You will have to send two APIs.
Two APIs.
So in those cases also we create a API, a scripted API where we just give them the single, and that single API will be capable of creating change and change task both. You will see these kind of many scenario. Apart from that, sometimes you will see basically you need to do lot of validations, lot of scripting part, like data before going into the target table. You need to do lot of validations and all in the data. Plus, you need to send a kind of very customized and descriptive response or error messages. So if you remember previous one, the error messages were going kind of very standard format, what provided by ServiceNow in the out of box. But customer want like more customized, more informative message to be sent. In those cases, we switch to a scripted REST web service. Okay, so that will be fully code. Nothing.
Okay.
ServiceNow will just provide you interface, and you need to write each and every line of code in that.
Okay.
Now, if you remember the direct web services, we were just sharing the URL. Was that URL doing anything? No, that URL is just to trigger, but behind that URL, behind that API, there is a lot of code written by ServiceNow for the direct web services. That's what tool is, right? Tool provide. Similarly, if you remember when we designed the import set web services, was that URL doing anything? That URL was just trigger, but behind that URL we have written a few line of codes, then we designed transform map, right? But in direct we didn't did anything because that was done by ServiceNow out of box. But ServiceNow direct in the direct web service didn't share the code with us so that you can modify it, because they had made it standard, and if your requirement lies in those standardization, then you can use the direct. Otherwise, they have given you further extension like design the import set API, then further scripted one. So to cater these use cases, we switch to scripted REST web services. So if you will type here scripted under web services, you will see this scripted REST API and scripted SOAP API. And again, these are inbound. Being specific, we are reading about or studying about inbound. Outbound was having just one use case to consuming the API shared by other party tool, which we covered in previous session. So either you can type scripted or you can type like web services. So under the web services, you will see many other things, and then under outbound, you will see the SOAP and REST, what we have seen yesterday. Then inside here, where it is.
Yeah,
Here,
yeah.
scripted REST web services, you will see scripted REST API or scripted SOAP services. Like as I said, for inbound, both can be done. So if you remember, in the when we created the import set, we shared endpoint through REST API Explorer. Also, we were having the SOAP WSDL on the
Mm-hmm.
web service. So you can use any one of them. But when you
Mm-hmm.
are talking about the scripted, then if you are designing a REST, that means that is only capable of REST. So you have to design either REST or SOAP. Designing one will not cater both.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so if you are designing a REST, then you have to write the code like what process through REST. And if you are designing SOAP, then you have to write separately as a SOAP. It is not
Mm-hmm.
something like, if you remember import set, we just created one table and it was capable of both. No. But in case of scripted, no. If you are writing a code or designing a web service for a scripted REST, that is something REST only. If you want SOAP
Okay.
as well, then you have to design it separately.
Mm-hmm.
So we will use SOAP concept and sorry, we will use REST here. Concept wise, most of the things are same. So and as we use REST most of the time, so we will cover the REST part. So
And these are out of the box scripted APIs already available.
no, no, yes, yes, yeah. These one, yes, these are the out of the box. They are basically for different. They some of these will be part of some plugins or something like that. And these are some of them are available, and if you find them useful, you can utilize. They are something
Mm.
like that. Okay. So here, what you can do, you have to first define the name of your API. So maybe I will say like create server demo. So first
Okay.
thing, as soon as you define the name, this API comes by
ID.
default, and the namespace is something unique for each kind of instance. And once you save it,
Mm-hmm.
then under resources, if like header parameter, if you want, mainly you need to understand this resource part. So you click on create new resource, and what exactly your whether you want to make this API for creating the record, or you want to make this API to like updating the record, all those things. So you can create multiple resources inside a scripted REST. So to post or create the record, you will create a post type of resource, and then you have to write each and every line of code here, what exactly that API is going to do. Like if they will send some JSON, so you have to get the JSON and then validate the data in the JSON and send them appropriate message. Everything will be written here. So if
Mm-hmm.
I say post and submit, this is how you define. Now coming to main and important part, that is the coding in a resource. But
Mm-hmm.
if I will now try it, I can go to REST API Explorer, and if
Mm-hmm.
I will try, um, and if I, this is my URL already generated for my API. So as I just created one resource, so here it's showing one resource, my API name, everything. Then what I will do, if I will try to send something, nothing will be available. It will not return anything because I didn't return anything in my code. See, any response, anything you are saying? No, because I didn't write anything till now in my API.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So I have to write each and every line of code in this API to tell like when to send successful response, when to send unsuccessful response, when to send what message, when to send what error, all those things. So we will go to our previous example, that was creating the servers through the scripted REST. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
give me a moment. So our example here, I will type scripted REST API. I will in this more and less all coding part. So the previous thing I told you like how to create the scripted REST and that under that how to create like your resources. So all those things you can do, and later comes man is the scripting part. Okay. So I am going to open one of the resource. So this resource is to this API or this resource is created for creating the Linux or Windows server. So how we do that? What code exactly we need to write here? So first thing is we get when we start designing this scripted REST API. When we start designing this scripted REST API, we got this request and response, two objects which are very important. This is something to get all the values which are sent by consumer. So at end, once we will be able to design this API, again we need to do the same thing. That is sharing the endpoint content type and content, all those things with the third party. So in those cases, if you remember, they used to send us a request that is a kind of content, right? And in return, what they will be getting? A response, right? Whether request is successfully created, what is the request number, all those things, right? Hello.
Yes.
Yeah. If you remember yesterday when we were configuring the outbound, what we were doing, we were sending a content, right? And then we were getting a response. In that response, if you remember, we were getting a incident number, and that incident number we were picking and putting into the work notes, right? They always, if you see, there are two part in the integration. One is the request, another one is the response, right?
Okay.
Request is sent by consumer, and the response in return to that request is always sent by publisher API. Till now, if you see, we need not to take care of these request response. We were just sharing the JSON, that is the request they will send, and what response will come, that is coming something service now sending out of box, because those are out of box API you were using. Now, as you are going to design, this is a custom scripted REST API. You need to handle both of these in your code. You need to tell this API what response you want to send to that third party tool. So that's why these two objects become very important here.
Okay.
Now, request is something you will be sharing a JSON as well, right, with them. Always when you share the endpoint, you share the JSON as well. So you have to first design your JSON, like what you want them to send. So this is something for this API, I want them to send name of the server in a key called server name, and this could be the any value which they will send. Then the class, because they have to tell whether they are sending a Windows server or Linux server, right?
Yes.
So we want a key in my JSON which should tell me whether they are sending a kind of Linux or Windows server. Then other field, like we want OS domain to be sent, we want environment to be sent, we want operating system of the CI or server to be sent, domain, IP address, and so description. But these two parameters are very important. First, name, what is the name, and then class. Class is again which will tell us in which table we need to create the record. So this JSON we will be sharing, right? And they will be sending these dynamic value, some values for each server, they will be different. Now this thing, when they will consume our API, they will send something like this. Then whatever they will be sending, will service now will be kind of picking that or catching that in an object called request. So that's what we are here writing, like we are defining a variable called request body, and we are saying request dot request body. So this particular thing will give you what exactly they have sent. Then this is again to get body in a processable format. Here we got the request body, and then on the request body we are saying like get the data string. So this is a kind of fixed command, you can say. This is giving us that body in a processable format. So it basically gives us a JSON. Then here nothing, it's optional if you want to do. Here I am just putting a log, which is basically telling, okay, what was sent by them. So later on, if they say, no, I didn't send this, I sent this, so that whatever they have sent, I'm just putting it in the my logs before even processing that data. So that is something proof for me what they have sent. If some issue come or they say, no, I sent this or that. So for troubleshooting purpose, we can refer and we can say, no, this is what you have sent, because this log runs in my code even before start processing the data sent by you. Okay. Then as there will be a huge and long code, what I have did, I just created a script include, and I am calling that script include instead of writing each and every line of code here. I can write full code here as well, but as that code is going to be used, so I have just put all the code inside this script include, and I am calling the function of that script include. So now what we will do, we will switch to this script include. And in that I am passing same parameter like this request and the response, so that I can set these object or get these object from my script include. So if I will switch to my script include, now this is the same name which we are calling here, script include, and then inside that script include function. So if I say this is my function, now the same variable which I am passing through when I am calling this function like request JSON and response, we are having them here. Now forget about this right now. Coming to this first thing, what I will do, so as I said, this is all custom, you will have to do everything. Now if someone has sent me some data, something like that, what I will do before even processing that, I will try to check whether that data is correct or not, right? So my code, whatever code I can pass, like I can parse or I can write a good code for JSON. But what if they have sent the wrong JSON? Then my whole code is going to break, because my code is expecting a JSON from them. But if they are not sending JSON, they are sending XML or any other thing. They have sent a string, but my API is not capable of processing a string. So they need to always send a JSON. So we can tell them, okay, just send the JSON, but we cannot rely them. Like they are going to send JSON always. So this first line, what I am doing here, I am saying that code, the request JSON, that is what we have got here, right? And I am saying, check if that request JSON is a valid JSON or not. Okay. So here you will see a lot of the function. First thing, this again, what is this? This is again a function inside the script include. So if now how I will switch to this function inside my script include, you will come down. Here is my function. This function I have written, this function is basically checking whether it is a valid JSON or not. So this is the function name. If you see, that is what I am calling here.
Right.
Same name. So this is how we call a function inside the script include. Like this is a function which was called by this resource, and inside that I am again writing a function which I am calling. So this underscore, do you see here before this name?
Yeah.
But here I didn't put the underscore. This is again a function. So this is called as a private function. So private function can always be called inside a script include. This function you cannot call from anywhere. You can only call it inside this script include.
Mm-hmm.
So this denotes like this is a private function, and this cannot be called from resource or business rule. This can be only called within this script include. And how you call this dot the name of function, and below we define the function. So if you go to this function, what we are saying, there is a kind of method called json.parse. Like it is a JSON feature. So I am using that, and whatever they have sent, I am parsing it inside that function. And if that would, what this function does it, if you are giving this function a valid JSON, then it will say, it will return true. And if that JSON is not valid, then it will return false. It will
Right.
give an error. So that's how I am trying to check whether this request sent by them is a valid JSON or not. So here, if you see, I am returning, if this is a valid JSON, I am returning true. If it is a not, then it will come inside this loop and I will say false. Who will get this true false? Whosoever is called. So who called?
Right.
This variable
Valid.
called. This variable said, is it valid JSON? Then this function will return true or false based on code written inside
Yes.
this. So if this
Yes.
will get false, let's say if this get false. Now if you see here, I have written if valid JSON, means if, what this mean, equal, it will do like this, equal to true. So it will say like if you will write this or this, both the same things are same. So it will say if JSON sent by them is valid, as here we received as what? False. That means it will say JSON is not valid. That means it will not go inside this loop. It will go where? It will go somewhere here, else part. It will, as condition is not met, it will go inside this. Now what here inside this else I am saying? Here you can see in these kind of codes, in these kind of scripted REST, it is very important putting proper comments so that if later on someone is coming and seeing the code, he should be able to understand. Because if you see,
Yes.
this is a kind of 300, 400 lines of code. Okay. So here what
Yeah.
I am saying like failure response because request JSON is not, request JSON is invalid. Now, to send the error message, you need to define what you need to send, as I said, because you need to control everything. I like in ServiceNow, you have a kind of a specific format or class which is used to sending the error messages. So what I am doing, I am just setting two variables here. That is error detail and error message. I am saying invalid error detail. I am saying invalid request JSON, and error message is something bad request. And then if you see here, I am calling a function again. And the what is the name of that function? Cell failed error message. And in that I am saying parsing response, error code, and error message and error detail. Response is something, the object which need to return. So I am going to set this one as this. Now why I have did this part? Again, if you see here, I need to pass the error at multiple levels. If I go to this function, this private function below, here, send failed error message. This is again kind of these many lines to send the error, right? Now, if I go up, you will see the same kind of error message because this is just one validation. I need to put many more validation. If you see here, here, that means those 8-9 lines which I showed you below, which is part of this function, I need to write here, 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 and maybe here, because there are multiple validation going to happen. That means again, first thing, it's not a good code because I am going to increase the number of lines, because same lines I am going to write everywhere, maybe 10 places. So then code will not be look good, and again reusability perspective is lost. So I am defining a function, and that function is expecting a response variable, what error code you want to send, what error message you want to send, and any detail. I am calling this function, and here this function is defined, that is for sending the error message. So you need to remember this class, this is very important. This class is something to send the error message when you designing the scripted REST.
Okay.
Without this, you cannot send the error. So I am creating an object of this class, and then I am setting the error message, set message. And what is the message? That was passed from top, from where I have called this function. And then inside error, I am setting like detail of the message. Like in the message, I said bad request. And we need to tell them in detail like why it is a bad request, right? So in the error detail, we are saying request JSON is invalid. That's why it's a bad request. And then we have to set the code. Like if you remember, we are getting 201 for when record is getting created. But there are similarly other codes of HTTP, like in case of bad request, we are sending 400, or you can go to more specific part of code 401. So that's what I am sending. And then I am setting, okay, in which format we want to send the response. I am saying send the response in the format of JSON. And then I am setting the error. This is something which I am printing in my logs so that I can see what error was sent to client or the third party tool. So this particular code is to send the error always. What error is there? Now, so what will happen? This particular thing, if they are not sending the valid JSON, then it will send them an error. Now, second case, let's say they have sent valid JSON. This return true. Then what will happen? It will not go to that else and it will not send the error. It will come inside the loop. Now, first thing, you need to identify what are the kind of mandatory things in your request, what they need to send mandatorily. So let's say I have said like server name and server class should always be mandatory. As part of business requirement, you said these two parameter can't be empty, because if you are not sending name, then if I will create a record or server without name, then there is no value of that. And when class is something which will tell me where I need to insert the record, that means this is again mandatory. So that means even before inserting the record, I need to check these two parameters in the JSON. Are they coming? If they are blank, then I need to send them error. So that's what here we are trying to say, like we are passing it through JSON parser and we are checking, is this request.server name is valid? So we are checking here if it is not undefined. Again, this is a function where we are checking whether the value is proper or it is not proper. So here this is function defined. It is saying like if it is not undefined, if it is equal to undefined, then return false. And if it is not undefined, then return true. So then if I scroll up and if I see here what I am saying this, if server name is not empty and server name is not defined, not undefined, then only go inside this loop. If they have sent an empty value in the server key and or they have sent it kind of undefined, then what will happen? It will go to the else part here, and again what it will say here, failure response because server name is in the request is empty. And then again I am setting the message missing required parameter, and what parameter is missing in the detail I am saying server name can't be empty, and then same error message I am calling, and these values will be set and they will receive an error. Now coming to next point, if let's say they have sent correct server name, then what will happen? Code will come inside this loop, and what it will do, I just want there should be not be kind of duplicate server names. So whatever they have sent, I have queried the CMDB CI parent server table with the name what they have sent. And if I found a record with the same name, so that's what I am saying. If server name is not exist, then go inside this loop. If that server name already exists, then again come to the else part. And what you need to say, failure response because server with this name already exists. And then we are saying the message new server creation not allowed because server with this name already exists. And then error code 400, error message and response, we are calling the same function. If the server name is unique, which already doesn't exist in ServiceNow, then this code will go inside this loop. And what it will do, it will start validating other parameter of the JSON. Okay, so we will validate the class, then we will validate domain and these things. So I think you will be thinking there is a lot of code, right?
Yeah.
So
looks like complex.
Yeah, it's a most complex part. So you will be using here all the things you learned till now. Guide record, your if else condition, your function defining, script include, all those things.
And how frequently this last scripted integration is used in most of the cases?
50-60% time you will be able to fulfill the requirement using import set. 70% time.
Okay.
Yeah, so just we will start this further. Okay.